This is the story of a place and the lives of the people who live there. Beecher Terrace, a historic community in the Russell neighborhood of Louisville, Kentucky, near the heart of downtown and the Ohio River. Public housing originated in the United States in the late 1930s during the Great Depression, when so many working Americans lost their jobs, then their homes. In Louisville, as in cities all across the country, public housing construction projects became a way to put people back to work and a means to eradicate unsafe and unsanitary homes, what some referred to as slums, many of which had been built in a previous century with outdated plumbing and bathrooms, sometimes shared by as many as 8 families. At that time, the city's Planning and Zoning Commission said the problem of slum housing was not racial but civic. The resulting development plans for Louisville's first public housing only reinforced patterns of racial segregation. Beecher's apartments featured electricity, central heating, gas stoves, and electric refrigerators, as well as private bathrooms with hot and cold running water, bathtubs, and toilets, not at all a given at that time. Beecher's administration building, the Baxter Community Center, originally housed a nursery, 6 club rooms, an auditorium and gymnasium all in one, and a medical clinic. Directly adjacent to the community center is Baxter Square, a Frederick Law Olmsted designed park that began its life as Louisville's first cemetery. Beecher Terrace was named for the abolitionist Reverend Henry Ward Beecher, the brother of Harriet Beecher Stowe. The 31.4-acre site originally included 808 units and 59 barracks-style buildings. Arranged over 8 superblocks, the buildings faced interior courtyards, a well-meant idea, but one that turned out to provide isolated gathering places for gambling, drug dealing, and other nuisance activities, often committed by outsiders. In 2016, after an extensive 2-year planning process, residents and stakeholders learned of a U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Choice Neighborhood Initiative grant opportunity. The Louisville Metro Housing Authority, Metro Government, and other institutions partnered to apply for and successfully receive a $29.5 million Choice Implementation Grant. This grant provided the seed money needed to begin implementing the Vision Russell Transformation Plan and is being leveraged with $200 million in additional investments to raise and redevelop Beecher Terrace into a new mixed-income community. Central to this story are Beecher's families. For now, they've relocated to new homes as the site is rebuilt. Many plan to return to Beecher Terrace to take part in Russell's transformation. They bring their own stories from the past, their dreams for the future, and a desire to preserve the stories of those who lived at Beecher long ago. Together, this is the Beecher Terrace Story.
When I say 10th Street, you say Cardinals. 10th Street, Cardinals. 10th Street, Cardinals. When I say red, you say black. Red, black, red, black. 5, 6, 7, 8. 10th Street, Cardinals. 10th Street, Cardinals. 10th Street, Cardinals. 1, 2, you know.
There was a housing boom in America following World War I. And in the 1920s, blacks bought property along Chestnut Street. And as a matter of fact, Chestnut Street was known at that time as Oatmeal Alley because a lot of folks that bought the house that struggled to pay for it, they usually ate oatmeal.
When it comes to Old Walnut Street, that was the black business district. So to the extent that we had black business owners, they often congregated and co-located along the Old Walnut Strip. You had people that owned nightclubs, black people that owned and operated movie theaters, and things of that nature.
It was once known as the Harlem of the South back in the day when Muhammad Ali Boulevard was Walnut Street, and people would come from all over this region of the country. It was full of black-owned businesses, nightclubs, banks, restaurants, etc. It was a happening place.
The West End was completely developed, and it had private business investors and entrepreneurs, shops, per neighborhood.
Walnut Street was jumping at that time. You had your pimps. The young people think that they're pimping now, but they don't know. I mean, they dressed to the nines, and you saw the nice cars, and Derby time was the best time. We'd get in the living room window and look at all of the cars that came from Detroit and Ohio, Chicago, Georgia, all those places. I mean, cars like you'd never seen before. We would be out there on Walnut Street dancing because the music would be blaring, you know, from the joints and the restaurants. I think of the smell of the food, the fish, the chicken, the chili. I think of all of that. I think about the drugstores and sitting at the counter on the round stools. I think of that. I think about the little Palace hamburger stand and going in there getting those greasy burgers, but they were delicious.
They had 3 movie theaters on Walnut that we would frequent. I would try to get into the pool hall anytime I could, and I got run out most of the time because I was too young.
Most of that fell apart during the 1960s. As the whites moved out to the suburbs, usually they were followed by the entrepreneurs and small shops that existed throughout the whole area, you know. And the Russell neighborhood was no different.
As a child, the old Walnut Street that we talk about today was still a remnant. There was still, I came along, I mean, most of the businesses had closed. There were a few, like the old Chili Parlor and the Catherine's Eat Shop. They were still there, but a lot of the upstairs part of those were like closed.
And so that legacy has carried on throughout, you know, the ages. The original neighborhood boundary for Russell was at 6th Street. Through working with people like Harlan Bartholomew, strategically thinking about how to keep people separated, that neighborhood boundary was pushed back to 9th Street.
But with urban renewal in the Russell neighborhood, they actually tore down the whole commercial strip, which was from 6th Street to 13th Street on Muhammad Ali. All the businesses up and down Walnut Street. When urban renewal came in and purchased the land, most of the land was owned by white real estate holders. So that means that the blacks that had the business, they were renting. So they got no economic benefit out of urban renewal. And so therefore, the declining of the neighborhood into poverty started at that time.
The story of Beecher has changed over the years, obviously, and it's also changed as public housing has changed its presence and form in not just our city, but in America as well.
I came up here in 47 and lived right next door. You could sleep on the side of the porch and wouldn't nobody bother you all night. And we had straw and everything. We sleep on the side.
Everybody grew up together. Everybody's family knew one another. You know, back then, you know, your parents' friends could whoop you, and wasn't no problem.
Living in Beecher Terrace was like everybody was on one accord. If you did something, Betty Sue said she's gonna get you. By the time you got home, you probably got 4 butt whoopings, and then when you got home, you got that 5th one. And everybody was on one accord. We loved one another. Everybody was like family. We was able to sleep with our doors open. We was able to stay all night over people's house. Didn't have to worry about nobody getting hurt or anything.
We had everyone as our parent, not just one parent, but we had the village that was being raised by every parent.
If, the kid next door didn't have shoes and we had an extra pair of shoes, we looked out for each other. It was instilled in us. And that's why I said when you asked about the respect, the values, yeah, we have that. We help each other out. That's what we do in this community.
Man, we were family. You can go to somebody's mama's house, your mama went home, You can go over there, eat, sleep, you know, their mama took care of you. Everybody's kids is watched.
And that particular connection socially was very strong, because when we interacted, let's say like at parties or something like that, it wasn't just at Baxter, it was anywhere. We always sort of in that same social strata.
I used the recreation center a lot. We did arts and crafts, we made pot holders. They even had a clinic downstairs in the basement. They had a dentist, things that they need now that they don't have.
When we was growing up, we had the community center, you know, Baxter. That saved like all of us growing up. Baxter Center, that was the best thing we ever had, you know what I'm saying? They had the after school program, you know what I'm saying? They was always, you know what I'm saying, willing to help and, you know what I'm saying, just care for the kids, you know what I'm saying? They was like family. They used to take trips so kids could see the world. Like we went to Canada, like I went to Canada for the first time in my life, messing with the resident council Baxter, you know what I'm saying? Niagara Falls, went to see that. We stayed for a couple nights, ate pizza, man, we had like some fun. We stayed in Detroit for a night, Uncle Tom's Cabin, we went to Motown. We did a lot of stuff.
One of my first experiences and a great experience was coming over here to Baxter's. And Baxter's also was where I learned how to cheer, how to dance, and then I eventually became a coach at Baxter's. When the girls got too old to cheer, which was the age of 13, and then also when cheerleading season was over for football, the girls had nothing to do, so I came up with Envy so they could perform after cheerleading.
You know, you can't go through Beecher Terrace without knowing who Mr. Stevie is. He's the bike man, and he's the guy right across from the Baxter Community Center who has all the bicycles hanging on his fence by his home, and they're stacked up by the door. And so any of the kids in Beecher Terrace that need their bike fixed, they know where to go. If they need a bike, they know where to go. And Mr. Stevie's right there, always with a smile and a helping hand and a wrench or a screwdriver to fix your bike.
My dad and mom, they were just pretty much everyday people. Like my mom was a homemaker for a few years, and then once we got up to some age where, you know, we didn't need daycare, she worked as a cafeteria worker. And my dad, he worked wherever he could. I mean, he was a laborer, he went out of town, he baked at a bakery. But this was so cute. This is a fond memory. We would be outside playing, all the kids. And if Batman came on TV, the court would clear out. I mean, the game would stop. If it was a baseball game, basketball game, Batman's on. Oh, I'm going in, Batman's on. So this is the early 60s, and that's what, you know, we had a good time.
I mean, there's a literal divide when we look at 9th Street, a literal island in the middle of 9th Street that divides us as people in the city of Louisville, east and west.
The project life is hard and it's very discouraging. Some people fall and they don't get back up. Sometimes we didn't have cereal milk, so me and my brother had to share. If he didn't drink up all the milk, then I got what was left over, but we actually literally sometimes had to share a bowl of cereal milk.
Beecher Terrace was a housing project that a lot of people wanted to live in because it was well kept.
It started to downfall in the late 70s to the 80s. There was a change in the administration from Democrat to Republican. Services were cut, the factory jobs were leaving town.
You had American Standard out of 7th Ship, the Henry Volk Company over at 10th and Dumanel. You can go down the line in terms of the industries that are gone.
The average household income in the Russell neighborhood is approximately $8,800 a year.
Now for those folks that are working, it's about $15,000. And that's the average income for all of Russell as well. In any event, that is nowhere nearly enough money to live on and to have a living wage.
After I got my high school diploma, I decided I was gonna work. And I tried it. I ended up getting a check at Kroger's trying to pay my child support. And I ended up one check, after union dues and taxes, I had a check for 61 cents.
You would have to work 2 jobs to get one check to be able to feed the family.
I put in an application, got an interview, And he went on the interview over my application and said, oh, you live in Beecher Terrace? My boss is not hiring no one who lives in Beecher Terrace. No, he's not dealing, there's been too many problems. He's not hiring anyone else. And that was just like a blow to the chest.
We were told, when coming from where we come from, we were told, and it was almost expected for us to almost not do anything with our lives.
There are a lot of stumbling blocks when it comes to employment. And a lot of it, they know people don't have the resources for, and it's mandated. Applying online. If you don't have a computer, that's not an easy task.
You cannot put oppressed or impoverished people together and accept it and not try to do something to change it.
The reason why a lot of them get into crime is because they ain't got no money. They ain't got no job.
And we had bake sales and threw parties and stuff like that, but you had also criminal activity going on. People sold weed. Crack didn't hit these neighborhoods and streets till about 86, 87 in Beecher Terrace, and that was when it just lost the whole generation, because the 30s-year-olds and 40-year-olds was the one using it, and they had smaller kids. So they kids missed school, dinners, and stuff like that. But the teenagers, 20s-year-olds were the ones selling it.
And it was easy money, it was quick money, and it was dangerous money. They wanted to help their mother. They wanted to help their brothers and sisters. They wanted to do something. They were helping out the family to their detriment, because a lot of them were incarcerated or murdered.
We all grew up with nothing, and then you had individuals that were making more than others. And then jealousy and envy came through. People started trying to rob each other, and then you had people breaking in people's cars and people's houses. It just came from all of us having nothing to a few having and many more without.
There's no unity here now like it used to be back in the days. Nowadays, these are new faces, and a lot of people don't even live up here. People come up here, they do transactions up here. I've seen it, and don't live here, but they come up here to do their dirt.
I mean, I think the biggest problem with these large, old public housing sites is not the people, it's the environment. And it's a magnet for those who want to do bad things. I mean, it's a magnet for predators. Almost all the problems we have at large public housing sites come from the outside.
You had the inside squabbles, but for the most part, the major dramas that happen in the neighborhood come from outsiders.
We didn't really have no problems or none of that until they started putting everybody in Beecher Terrace. When they shut down Southwick Cotter Homes, and I think that's when the murders and stuff was going on up here.
And so when they moved up here, of course, they always had enemies at other developments. So when they moved together, it was just like a territory thing, you know. And they just couldn't get along, you know. And they feel like guns is the answer to it, you know.
They might be up here visiting somebody, okay? Somebody called, okay, Tony's over here. Yeah. He's right over here over May house. So here they come from way down to the west end to come up here and kill him.
It even got so bad, it was so much killing back to back. I remember walking through and seeing a body laying out there, and like people that was breaking down crying, and I'm walking up to console them and stuff, and they don't even know this person. It was just like the situation of what was going on, and people was just tired.
I mean, it's like a maze, a trap. You know what I'm saying? Keeps your mind like when they say the hood has a trap on you, it really does. It's like keeps your mind inside the box instead of thinking outside the box.
Well, I remember, you know, back you could play dominoes, sit out and play dominoes. The elder people could walk up and down and without being afraid of these young ones.
When somebody gets murdered, it's kind of like business as usual, and people have become desensitized to the crime.
About 60% of the people who live in Russell have been touched by the justice system in some manner.
But now when they got rid of the housing authority policemen, the city took over, and I don't know whether they were scared to come up through here or what, you know, but a whole lot of change, you know, that the community, the kids didn't know the policemen or nothing, you know, and it was just different from what it used to be.
Growing up, first you learn to run from the police. Mom used to shelter us and tell us, you know, certain times of night we shouldn't be out because they used to have stories that kids were taken down by the river and beat up by the police. Even if we wasn't doing nothing, we ran because the police was the enemy to us.
You could just be posted out, and you know they might come through on a four-wheeler, horse, walking, running. I don't know, but when they do, it's like, hey, you know, stop her, come on, patting you down, you know, going through all the improper procedures. We have no win here.
Just because there are some folks in a neighborhood who have been incarcerated or who have conducted illegal activity, that doesn't mean everyone in that neighborhood is a criminal or destined to be a criminal. So if you are living in Beecher Terrace or the surrounding Russell neighborhood right now, your life expectancy is going to be at least 10 years fewer than if you live in St. Matthews or out toward the eastern part of our county.
Beecher Terrace and the Russell neighborhood definitely are food desert areas. Almost on every block, when you look at the Russell neighborhood on the Broadway side, you have fast food upon fast food upon fast food. And then you have to go for almost a mile before you get to a grocery store.
Ain't nothing around here. You know, back in the days when I was growing up, it was a consolidated Winn-Dixie back, you know, down there on 15th or whatever. But you know, there's nothing there now. Everything closed. What we gonna do when everything shut down? The only thing open is White Castles. And we gotta drive the East Sun Exotic, Soul Foolish, whatever you wanna call it. We gotta ride way 30 minutes away. Sometimes if you ain't got a car, if you ain't got no truck, right, you gonna feel like you don't wanna eat no McDonald's or Wendy's that day. But you got to.
If you don't live in Beecher Terrace, people want to look down like we all are drug addicts or whatever, you know. But it's good peoples here, and the good peoples came out of Beecher Terrace. Everybody's not a drug user or whatever. You have good people here, and good people watch after one another, you know.
The Russell neighborhood has been the home of people who have been able to either live in Beecher Terrace or live in the Russell neighborhood, and now, you know, they're serving in office. They're principals of high schools. They're running nonprofit organizations. You know, they've been athletes, and so we've got that history in the Russell neighborhood that with this revitalization, we have to make sure that we lift that up so that the next generation knows that history and knows that they come from something of value.
There is so many of us that have made it through and became a lot of good people. And it wasn't because of the building, it was because of the inside, the home life. It had nothing to do with the buildings.
Even through the many challenges and obstacles that I've had, I'm the first one in my family to achieve a master's degree.
My association with Beecher Terrace was I was actually born in Beecher Terrace in '45, September 22nd.
I just want to be the inspiration and let them know that you can come in here and you can be that. You just got to believe that you can do it. You don't have to make those same mistakes everybody else made. You don't have to be that person that's selling drugs. You don't have to be that person that's going to pick the gun up. It don't have to be you. So with me, myself, and my friends and my family that's come from here, we want to be that example to show people that some of that stuff that projects get the stigma for, it doesn't have to be you.
When my administration came into office in 2011, we didn't know if we were going to be coming out of the Great Recession or not. We thought maybe there was a glimmer of hope, but one of the things my team and I were determined to do was to change the narrative of investment in West Louisville. My team and I started having conversations here with the residents in Russell and with our partners at the Louisville Metro Housing Authority
and certainly in Washington, D.C. with HUD as well.
We have to rebuild a neighborhood which will go a long ways toward the rebuilding of our city. And I want all of us to be a part of it. I want everybody to feel the love and the commitment that we have to it.
I am going to miss it. That was our old home front. That's where we met a lot of our friends, went to school with them, played with them.
It's always sad to see a neighborhood like with so much history in it to go down like that, because people like, it's like losing a house, losing like a part of your childhood growing up. But it's always good to change for the better, you know what I'm saying, the positive.
What I'm hopeful of is that the Housing Authority will be able to take a look at who they're displacing and who wants to return, and make sure that they set up mechanisms so that people can return.
As government encourages industry and business to make investments in low-income and underserved areas, they will generate the growth that we need over time. It has to come with time, and it will.
Public housing, which is all low-income housing, is going to be replaced by mixed-income housing, which will be a portion public and a portion market, and some in between. So I think that investment creates a new fabric for the neighborhood.
So the vision and the dream would be, as you're coming through the Russell neighborhood, you'll start feeling the vibrancy of street-level retail, entertainment. It's not going to be the way it is today. It's going to be very different, so we're hoping folks will embrace the growth and embrace the newness and embrace the new amenities that are going to come along with that.